Welcome to the Alain interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
Today we talk to Amos Gitai, who doesn't need a specific presentation. He's one of the most famous movie directors. I think he went 11 times to Cannes with his movies. He went to Venice. He had plenty of awards. He is a commander of the Order of the Letters, Arts and Letters in France. He had Legion of Honor and many other honors. He has been professor at the Collège de France and in the most important Ivy League universities in the United States. He had all over the world recognition for his work of movie director, but he also worked very hard in organizing exhibitions, and he also edited a wonderful book about his mother's letters and also another one about his father's achievements, and he worked with museums. You are a very good son, after all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like they're both people who co-produced me.
But they both people who co-produced you were rather different, because one was more European and maybe German in a way, and the Bauhaus architect Munio Gitai, and your mother was like a pioneer aristocratic of the beginning of the State of Israel, something like that.
Absolutely. No, and they are very courageous. I mean, in the fact that my mother was born in Tel Aviv, the year that Tel Aviv was created, 1909. And when she was 18 or 19, she felt that it's a bit provincial. So with two other girls, they went to Vienna to meet Freud. And then she stayed until 32. When she went to Berlin, she saw Hitler speaking in Alexanderplatz, and she decided to come back. But the fact that coming from Tel Aviv, a province, to Vienna, which was like the mecca of psychoanalysts and so on, she had the courage. And Munio, my father, a similar way, he came from a relatively provincial Schlesian town and went straight to the most avant-garde school of art and architecture, the Bauhaus. So, like you mentioned, Alain, they were different.
When did your father came to Israel, to stay in Israel? Some of the Bauhaus, I mean, Mies van der Rohe and others went to Chicago, New York, and so on.
Yeah.
Why did your father go to Israel, and when?
So, again, it's also in my cinematic work. I like the context, let's say general history with a big H, and the personal biography. So my father was at the Bauhaus, student and working for Mies van der Rohe. This is in the 30s. We know that in 33, Hitler came to power in January. In April, it's the racial laws against the Jews. And only a week after, he's picked up with 4 other students in the Bauhaus, beaten very badly and thrown to jail. Then his lover at the time was a German woman. She helped him to get out. It's still a bit gray. And he goes to Switzerland. And Paul Klee helped some of the Bauhaus students to cross the border to Switzerland. He went to Basel. And he stayed there. At some point, the Swiss started to give the German Jews back to Hitler. So he knew that it's coming. And like you mentioned, most of his teachers went to Chicago or to New York, but they went to the US. He was very enthusiastic by the social experiments of the kibbutz, of creating a modern society in Israel. And he decided to go to Israel, which is another saga, a very interesting story. He was kind of a bit worried, so he went with his Swiss friend, non-Jewish Swiss friend. He told him, "Why don't you come with me?" And they came to Palestine. They got a certificate because the Brits at this point would only give to Jewish immigrants who had some craft. So that's why a lot of people could not come to Israel and to be saved.
Because Palestine was under English-British mandate, right?
Absolutely.
At the time.
Yeah.
So the question is this: both your parents at the end of the 30s were living in Israel.
Yes.
But with the difference that your mother was born there and your father was a volunteer to emigrate there. I mean,
Yes.
Volunteer in the sense that circumstances have obliged him to do it, any way to move out of Europe. Did your parents at that time really imagine that 10 years later there would be a state of Israel?
There was a difference, let's say. The two groups which made a composite of the Israeli population are people who came by ideology, like the family of my mother. Her father came on 1905 from Bialystok through Odessa to Alexandria and then by camels to Palestine.
Ideology, you mean Zionists, right? People who were Zionists.
I would say they were kind of anarcho-socialist, and they wanted to create a modern society, not a traditional Jewish society, not a religious society. On the opposite, they were not religious at all. They felt very happy to be Jews, but not religious. Anyway, Judaism, Alain, is a strange composite between national feeling and religious. They went more to the national identity. That's my mother's side. Munio is like some of these.
Your father, you mean?
My
yes.
father is these people who were ejected by Europe. And if they would not go, that's it, they would perish. When my mother is born to these Russian socialist immigrants, there are only 50,000 Jews in Palestine.
Yeah, but this was on the British mandate anyway. There was Zionists, there were kibbutzim, and so on. But did they think there would be a state of Israel?
So I think that the family of my mother thought that it will be a state, and they worked for it. My grandfather, maternal grandfather, was very close to Ben-Gurion, and he was in charge of major economic institutions to build the infrastructure. So when people attribute the creation of Israel only to the Holocaust, to the Shoah, they are wrong. Actually, the project of modern Israel started before 1948. Started, if you want, even before the immigration of my grandparents, started the end of the 19th century by the first modern wave of immigration. So these people believed that there would be a state. That was their project. My father was ejected by Europe. If he wouldn't go, he wouldn't be alive. So this is this kind of two groups, I would say.
And Israel has been, at the beginning, for many years, a kind of socialist country. I mean, the image of the kibbutz was symbolically, the idea of Israel, right? Or at least many people, even non-Jews, went to Israel to experience, myself included, the experience of a kibbutz, or what the kibbutz was. And there was this idea of Israel, as you said, modern Judaism, or Jews who were becoming suddenly agricultural experts, soldiers, pilots, and so on and so forth. When this kind of image has changed?
I think essentially it's this image of the converting the Jew not just to be merchant or intellectual, but to be soldier and peasant is the legacy of the labor movement. When the labor movement lost power, which is in the 70s, mid-70s, and the first time that Begin took power with the Likud, then it was, by the way, Alain, there was a very interesting sondage by a public opinion commissioned by the right wing. They asked the Israeli to define if they are Israeli or Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Who define themselves as Jews traditionally voted for the right, and the people who define themselves as Israelis traditionally for the labor. So when the power shifted in the 70s to the right, and then there were several little episodes when Rabin came to power in the 90s, or when Barak came to power. So it's very little episodes, not very long, with intervals in the domination of the right wing. Then it slightly changes. But now, absolutely an homogeny of Likud and extreme right, that's the tendency.
Your films, you did documentaries also, and you did films about, remember Kippur, there was a particular film about the war where you yourself have been wounded as a soldier in a helicopter accident, or before you did the film Kadosh, which was already discussing the world of the very Orthodox Jews and this extremist world of religious people. So since the beginning, you were very interested in all that. And later, obviously, you did this play, this film, everything around Rabin and the horrible murder that happened. And you were yourself, I cannot say friend, but I mean, at least you were very close to Rabin, and you did a very important work on his memory, or in the memory of this terrible event.
I don't think the arts change the reality in a direct manner. They don't. Recently, I was invited by the ex-foreign minister of Spain to make a speech at Guernica, at the site.
Yes.
For the anniversary of the bombardment of the Luftwaffe. And there was quite a lot of public, foreign, and so on, by Miguel Moratinos, who was the ex-foreign minister of Spain. And I told him, in the duel between Franco and Picasso, Franco won, Picasso lost, okay? But in the long term, Picasso won. So if you think about the Spanish Civil War today, you think about only one painting, one image, the Guernica. And among all the hundreds and hundreds of, and maybe thousands of paintings of Picasso, there is one which will be remembered. So in a way, that's the way that the art can hit back the politics, by preserving the memory. And Franco did not want it to remain the memory, but this is the memory. So I think that part of the work that I do is inspired by this idea. It's not going to change the immediate political election for the good or the bad. I think that artists who promise you that if they do a film, the world would change, is fake. But you have to inscribe some ideas in memory. And the planet has not always changed by machine guns and money, but also by ideas. So this kind of way of thinking is contributing to change in a way in which the art is the central focus, not demagogy or simplistic.
You think that today, in these recent years where Israel is living a very difficult period, and it's also difficult not only because any war is horrible and difficult, but also because this particular war has made anti-Semitism growing in the world. How do you work at the moment? Are you working because you consider yourself in exile in France, where you also worked a lot and have stayed, and some of your children live? We could say that France is probably your second home, but how do you live this duality? The fact that you are an Israeli, certainly, that you even fight it in the war, and therefore you have all the credits to be an Israeli. In the same time, you also spend a lot of time in France, which is the diaspora, and therefore you have a direct feeling of what the anti-Semitism is in Europe.
I think that the problem of Israel, it's a contradiction, that it became too strong, military-wise, sophisticated technology military. So they think that everything is easy by resolving to force. We're talking today, a few hours ago, they bombarded Qatar, and now the sky is the limit, So in a way, the strength is a weakness, because then you are not obliged to find solutions which are not based only on force. And they think that the more they will hit, the more they will destroy Gaza, they will get victory. I don't know even what is the meaning of victory. So not just me, but a good chunk of Israelis who also love this country, because there are a lot of things to love in it. The creativity, the sensitivity, the human quality, are devastated. They feel that they've been picked up and kidnapped collectively by a regime that doesn't want to listen to anything but only the rapport de force, and even selling it as an idea.
Therefore, many artists are going away, or they're living in other countries, they try to work somewhere else.
The catch is that some people are going away. A lot of people are being refused, like you said, by the world. Refused, boycotted, etc., etc.
Yeah, because nowadays they say, no, we are not going to have a football game with the Israeli team. This conductor is from Israel, therefore we don't want him to...
I have an argument with it, and I said it to the Spaniards when I was in Spain recently to show my theater house, which you saw in London, but there was also in Rome, in Berlin, Paris, etc. It means that if the world refuses Blanc every Israeli, just because he's Israeli. First of all, it's racist. Secondly, it helps the current Israeli government who wants us to all to feel claustrophobic. So in a way, they help Netanyahu, and they diminish the capacity of the opposition forces within Israel to have their say in this kind of
But they did the same with the Russians because of the war of Ukraine. They say these ballet dancers, they cannot dance, or this music conductor cannot perform in a theater. Punishing individual artists because of politics of their country. What do you think about that?
If they stand for the diminishing of the other, whether it's Ukrainian or Palestinian, then you can also disinvite them. But some artists also are fighting for the rights of the other, and you cannot just outright refuse them. Otherwise, you don't help the inner struggle. So it's a bit simplistic to refuse.
But did you feel yourself, Amos Gitai, in France or other countries, that you were less than you were before? Did you have this personal discrimination for, not personally, but in your work or in producers? Did you want to produce your movies or your theater, whatever?
I didn't confront it, but that's why I feel very comfortable to defend other Israelis, which I feel are defendable. I did the Golem piece, which was a major success in Paris. We played to a full house 25 times, although the thematic of the Golem is anti-Semitism. So you could have thought that people will be against me making a piece of theater with these thematics. More than a third of the language of the Golem, a part is in French, but a big chunk is in Yiddish, okay, to a French public. Nobody raised the flag, nobody resisted. But also I have to say that I include in the performance Israelis, Palestinians, Iranians, all together. And this is for me the achievement beyond the artistic achievement. This was the case of House, the performance, and now it's the case of Golem. And the Golem was recently in Pompeii, and next year it will be in Madrid in March. We are considering playing both in New York. So I think that part of the statement is also that we do not refuse ourselves to work with the other. So on stage, side by side, you have Israelis, Palestinian, Iranians talking to each other, even loving to be together. And this is by itself an act of resistance in a world which wants everybody to hate each other.
Now you are in Tel Aviv, right?
Yes.
What happens in Israel besides Gaza or the fact that recently there was this very short but difficult war against Iran, and every day there is a problem. The other day in Jerusalem, there was people were killed in a bus, or every day it's front page news somehow. And how do people live in the country? How do you yourself live in the country? Is it very much changed since?
It's difficult because we are confronting with a government led by a guy that I sometimes say that he swallowed the text of Machiavelli. He's a manipulator on a very high level, and people feel being hostages by themselves in the country. There is major mental pressure on people who actually don't agree with the act of the government, but they're here. So
in the daily life of Tel Aviv, for instance, do you see people nervous? Do you see people being worried, afraid?
It's uneven. Every Saturday, every Shabbat, there is this ritual of tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, going to demonstrate now already more than 2 years.
It doesn't seem to be very much listened by the people.
They are not listened, they are ignored, they are confronting violence by the police, but they're still doing it every Saturday, every Saturday, every Saturday. On the other hand, life continues. The Israeli economy is in a pretty good condition. The restaurants are quite full, but it's a sad moment to a country because if this regime will continue the way they continue, they can destroy their own country, which is now becoming like the expertise of some leaders, including the guy in America, that they start by destroying their own country, the universities, the cultural center, the things that every modern democratic society needs like an oxygen. And that would be a tragedy because, let's say, the Americans, they will prevail. It's a big, strong country. They have much better structures of constitution. But Israel is a fragile country surrounded by a hostile environment. If they keep on going for a long time, people are worried.
Yeah. Having this double experience of France and Israel, and plus having been almost everywhere in the world, is there a difference between being Jewish, being a French citizen and Jewish, or being an Israeli citizen and Jewish?
I think that the conflict put these things together in an unjustified manner, but they are together. We also see the gradual divorce of young generation of intelligent American Jews from the Israeli project. They say, we don't know what these crazy cousins in the Middle East are doing. We don't want to be associated with it. So in a way, this government is hitting the most sensitive and essential elements that it will prevail.
And you have been in trouble. You yourself, who have been wounded in wars, are you feeling sometimes in danger because of what you say or because of what you do in your work?
I don't feel, but this was my attitude throughout the years. I cannot predict that it will continue. We will do quite a big event on the 1st of November, which according to the Hebrew calendar is the anniversary of 30 years of the assassination of Rabin in Tel Aviv.
What are you going to do, Amos?
It will be like the performance we did in London, Lincoln Center, more recently in Salzburg, in Paris, in the Philharmonie in Châtelet. So it will be both a reading, a video, and a music. And I never did it in Israel. So this time we're going to do it in Israel. So we'll see if I'm able to talk to you after that.
You had a personal experience with Rabin, right? You traveled together. I don't know if you could consider yourself friends, but you have been a lot together. What kind of person was Rabin? And why you feel so inspired by insisting on, which I understand and appreciate, but on the figure of Rabin?
I'm not in a cult of personality, even not for Rabin. But there are certain characteristics of him that I liked. He was shy, he was modest, he was not considered himself like the perfect PR guy, like the guy we have now. So he was stuttering sometimes, but he was sincere and had integrity. And also, it's the only moment, Alain, this very brief moment 30 years ago, that there was a real effort to reconcile the almighty Israel-Palestinian conflict. It's the only moment. Left or right, they never did it as he did it methodologically. There was a committee about Jerusalem, a committee about territories, about water, about recycling, about money, about every other. He said, let's put him and Shimon Peres, let's put all the questions on the table and let's discuss them. Maybe we will not reach an agreement because it's obviously not only Israel which is concerned. Palestinians also have a part in the failure of this period and even in the destabilization of his government. And I think that from the beginning that this particular conflict, Israel-Palestine, is the centerpiece.
Let's open a parenthesis. Of course, you're an architect, you talk about your parents, but I mean, you are a movie person. You are known and famous for that. And this is what you teach in universities and so on. So what do you think about the cinema today, cinema in general? I mean, there has been a change in the sense that now there are all these movie series in television, a remake of old movies in series. People go less to the theaters. What do you think about that?
I think that cinema is in a crisis. And it's in a crisis because we have, on one hand, very powerful structures like Netflix, let's say, but not just Netflix, want immediately to dominate the market, but creating very clear structures. And so we miss the more wild propositions like Pasolini, like Visconti, maybe even, although more classical, like Jean-Luc Godard, people who will question a medium. And so they're given less and less space, and I think it's a pity. It's becoming more poor. If I took a flight, I went recently to work with the University of Stanford, who is doing a big job on my lectures at Collège de France. And I looked maybe 50 films. Frankly, very little to see. Very little inspiring. Okay, you understand the mechanic. So I think that this medium, which I think is fantastic between image and music and this and that, is becoming too predictable because the pressure of the conventional production is too big. I think, by the way, the arts are suffering in a similar way. I'm not so aware of literature, but even literature. So we have less and less space for works which will challenge the medium. Like, let's say, Joyce would challenge.
I mean, there is less experimental. People are afraid of investing because people don't go to the cinema. Many, many years ago, there were patrons, like people, private people who financed, for instance, the films of Buñuel at the beginning, or Polanski, or others who were financed with private money and not so much money. Nowadays, this seems to be gone, right?
Yes.
Cinema was art that was very much discussed, also not only watched, but also discussed. People used to talk a lot about it. You see this film, what do you think about this? Waiting for the new movie of Amos Gitai, or Fellini, or Godard. And you're right, this doesn't happen also for literature or for the arts.
Visual art, yes. So you have, in most cases, very strong and shining markets because investment continues. But since you asked me about the content, not just the procedure or the commercial aspect, there is a problem. We will see. We got surprising good news in the ocean of bad news. Yesterday, the new film I did, which is called Golem in Pompeii, is going to be shown in the main Asian festival in the main competition in Tokyo.
That's good.
So you have some sort of exceptions, but in general...
But these competitions like Jarmusch, who just won the festival in Venice, or Cannes, or Sundance, or Locarno, or Berlin, I mean, these famous festivals.
It's a kind of a way to show new works. The issue, what is the value of the work? I was in agreement when Alberto Barbera decided not to boycott any Netflix film, but just to judge the quality of the film. Because for me, this is the issue. The issue is the film. Okay,
Of course.
There was a discussion between the French and the Italian, but I thought he was right.
What do the young people who are influenced by the artificial intelligence, by these telephones, by these, who live in that world of influencers and so on and so forth, they don't like cinema anymore? They want another kind of cinema?
No, I think the AI is an interesting question. It's an interesting challenge because I'm not so scared by it, If you look, Alain, at this beautiful library in London of A.B. Warburg.
Yes.
What does this beautiful, beautiful work that they are doing and restoring it, what does it say? It says, let's think, how do we organize knowledge? That's basically the question of A.B. Warburg. And how can we associate a painting of Leonardo with a quantum physics? Okay. In a way, the freaky way that A.B. Warburg proposed to us, just by the proximity on the shelves, to think to how to connect disciplines, this cannot be done by any AI because this is really depending on the human brain and the way you want to associate elements. And I think that's the human answer to the mechanical reproduction answer, to propose a non-linear association. And the different AI cannot predict it. They can predict elements which are in the realm of predictability. But I think that the creative process, a lot of it is intuitive. Before Jean-Luc Godard died, I had a very interesting visit. He invited me to come and visit him. I was surprised. I went to Roll to meet him.
Roll in Switzerland, where he lived, right?
Where he lived. And after a lot of discussion and so on, I actually filmed part of it. He told me that he's very fascinated, you'll be surprised to hear, by the Kabbalah. Okay, Jean-Luc Godard, who is always accused of not being. And I think for me it's actually clear because sometimes you see a film by Godard and you feel that he actually, when he did the montage, he put one scene next to another, and only after he put one next to another, he tried to find the meaning of putting one next to another. So it is a purely intuitive procedure, and this cannot be imitated because there are no parameters to imitate. So I think there is still a lot of field to have AI help us, I suppose, for lawyers to research all the prejudice, the previous judgment, so they don't have to go to some dusty libraries and look for it, or even for medical treatment to have different options, so on. But there are some domains, especially the creativity, which cannot be pre-simulated.
What is, on your view, I mean, you consider yourself an artist?
I don't know. I always sign my film saying Amos Gitai, architect, film builder.
Be honest, you consider yourself an artist?
For me, I like the artistic way of going about things, yes.
We're talking about cinema, right? And you work in cinema, you work in theater, and one of your major qualities as a director, this is a personal view, but I think many people will agree, is the choice of the actors and the way you conduct them, you direct them. Are actors changed? I mean, you had very great actors who sadly are not anymore, like Jeanne Moreau, who was a close friend of yours. But you also use in your films, in your plays, new actors, as you said, Israeli, Palestinian, French, English, and you don't make a specific repetition of choice. Is there a change? Nowadays, there are no more stars, actresses or like before, and there is a good medium average level of good actors. How is it? Can you tell us the rapport with the actors as you had? And it's very strong in your work.
The way I like to cast, I believe a lot in what John Huston says, that when he was casting somebody, he will look at their eyes. Basically, the eyes are a way to communicate intelligence, sensitivity, and he would cast by looking at the eyes. Obviously, you need to see the choreography, the body, the movements, and so on. But I don't like anymore to do traditional casting. I like to have a coffee or a discussion, and then to see if we can connect, And the mechanical thing of the almighty director with the sunglasses, having some scared actors, is not really what I'm interested. I'm interested to see if I can touch a kind of a human soul. And in that, I'm not conventional. Let's say in Laila in Haifa, one of the lead actors, she is a Palestinian. She doesn't work as an actress. She works in a kindergarten in Tel Aviv. One of the other actors is the actor who played already in the Kippur film. He played one of the judges of Rabin, and now he decided to be a carpenter. So it's these people who like to preserve some authenticity and not just going into the machine and then publicizing Dior or stuff like that, which is also can be quite destructive. I mean, they can get a lot of money, but they can become a kind of a consumer object themselves. So sometimes I saw big stars which are doing this activity. I'm not impressed.
You were particularly impressed by Jeanne Moreau?
Jeanne Moreau was very exceptional because she was opinionated. She didn't like flattery. If you start by flattering her, she would throw you out. And she didn't want to become marketing. She wanted to be challenged, which I like in a way. And when she was challenged, she loved it. People said, "Oh, it's the almighty Jeanne Moreau. How can..." No, on the contrary. If you don't, she was kind of getting bored. I love the sentence she said to me, She said, "I will do a theater or film only if I can learn something that I don't know already." And this is very different from many people who like to repeat again and again. So when I did, let's say, the opening of the Avignon Festival on the text of Josephus Flavius on the Jewish wars and the destruction of Jerusalem, you come to her study, the table was full of books about anti-Semitism, about the Roman Empire, about the exile. So she would take a project, which for me is the good attitude, as a pretext to learn something that she does not know.
What about the other actresses like Juliette Binoche, like Léa Seydoux? You had many famous actresses in your movie.
Each one I have, let's say, with Juliette Binoche, it's a film which now is kind of shown a lot here because it was about the disengagement of the Israel from Gaza, the Sharon projects. And she had to play a kind of a role that there is a duality. When she's in France, she's very agitated, almost hysterical. So the turmoil is inside her. And when she comes to Israel, she becomes very calm because the turmoil is outside. And she had to play this kind of transition, which was very interesting, to build it with her, to explain it to her. Also about intimacy, about nudity. So each one, it's like people, the wonders of the world, that we have several billion people and each one is different. So you have to adapt the methodology again and again and again. And this is not something that you can standardize. So Juliette Binoche is different than Natalie Portman. Rosamund Pike is different. Hannah Shigula is different. The languages are different. The Israeli actresses. So I like this human richness.
To be more interested by what you say and by women actresses.
Yes.
Why? Because you see them as the other?
I see them as the other. They had a certain phase. I think now it's different, that they had to resist against suppression and so on. So they had to find all sorts of sophisticated way to do it. Let's say now in the last two films, I used quite a lot text of Virginia Woolf, In the last film, the Golem in Pompeii, it's also a relatively short text of Virginia Woolf, which is called A Woman Under Aerial Bombardment. She writes it under the Blitz, okay? And it's a beautiful text because it's about the sound, the whistles of the bombs. And then you can take a text of Virginia Woolf written in 1940. And since I'm in a region that this is an experience, the echo is beautiful. Also, Susan Sontag in the last film, the film we did, Why War, about the text she read, thinking about the suffering of the other. I think it's an essential text because there will never be peace if we only think about ourselves, about us, about our suffering, about the tragedies. We have to always take into account the other, because if we only think about us, it will never be a reconciliation. And the problem right now of the both groups, they only think about their own suffering. There is no space for the other. And they are completely convinced. And this is a problem because peace, like love, you have to have the other. If not, it's not love and it's not peace. It's a unilateral stuff. So I think that I'm drawing from these texts, which are not new, etc. I'm drawing these ideas.
So you are an architect. You are a movie director. You are a theater director.
Yeah.
You are obsessed by literature and philosophy.
Yeah.
So who are you?
I'm all of that, maybe more, maybe less.
You didn't say that you were also a father and a grandfather.
I want to be a father and grandfather, and I love my two children. I think they challenge me and they're fascinating. And they're good, honest people, so we have to leave something to the world among the people that are close to us. I think that the uni occupation of a filmmaker who is just going to festivals and all his obsession is about film and film, I find it relatively boring. So I like to be stimulated by sometimes a poem, a work of art, an old text, biblical text. All of that, I think that's for us to choose and to be inspired and to say what we want to say through this maze, this complexity.
This flame and enthusiasm that you still have, how did you keep that alive? Now it's many years since you started, right? What do you do? Do you look forward all the time?
Yes.
You talk to young people more?
I talk to young and to old. I'm not against old people. I'm not especially for young people, but I'm not against young people. No, I'm open to experience new things, and I'm curious. And anyway, at some point it will stop by itself. So I don't feel a necessity to intervene, to force myself into retirement.
There is no reason to retire.
Our voyage on this beautiful planet is short. So let's do what we love to do. I consider it, as I said, a privilege that I only did films I wanted to do. I never did anything I did not want to do. And that I have by good people also. The theater, Wajdi Mawad, the director of one of the National Theater, gave me the stage. He gave me the means to do House and Golem. I invite you to come to see Golem in Madrid next March and maybe in New York. And Costa Gavras bought for me the first pellicule to do a documentary. So I don't have a somber idea of humanity, although we live in a somber moment. But there are also good people who stretch their hand and they come, and without any reward, they say, okay, we'll help you. And I think that I met wonderful people.
Thank you, Amos. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And good luck for your work.
Alain Elkan interviews.